Are you ready to feast on nature's bottom feeders? Welcome to Shrimppocalypse Buffet, where it's all shrimp, all the times, legs, shells, and all. Dive headfirst into a never-ending pile of crustaceans that look like underwater insects but taste, well, sort of okay if you drown them in cocktail sauce. Peel their little exoskeletons off with your bare hands and marvel at how their beady little eyes are still staring at you. Want to up the gross factor? Try our all you can eat shrimp head special because nothing says fine dining like sucking out a shrimp's brain. And don't worry about hygiene. We know your fingers are going to be covered in shrimp goo, so paper towels are on the house. Shrimp Apocalypse Buffet because somebody dared you to eat this much shrimp, so now you have to. Welcome to Movie Postmortem, where we dissect films of all kinds, whether they're good, bad, or those guilty pleasures we just can't quit. I'm Reggie Hill, and I'm joined by my nephew, Isaiah Brown. Together, we're here to examine what worked, what didn't, and why we keep coming back for more. So grab your popcorn because no movie is safe from the scalpel on Movie Postmortem. And today we will be covering The Substance, a new film that's out in theaters now. So today I'll be doing a solo review. I wanted to cover this film because it's been getting a lot of attention at the Golden Globes and now it's nominated for 4 Oscars. It came out a few months ago, but I was actually able to catch a showing late last night. It's a movie that's about 2.5 hours long, and normally I don't like watching movies that late, but I had been meaning to see it, and since I missed it when it first came out, I took this opportunity to check it out last night. So first, before I kind of dive into the specifics of what I liked or didn't like about the film, I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars rating. And I think just because of the nature of this film, it crosses a couple of different types of films. I would say this is more of a guilty pleasure type of film that I could see people recommending to others if they would like this type of material rather than simply a good film in the future. And so I'll go over a overall summary of the plot. This is probably what I would consider light spoilers. So if you don't want to know anything about what happens in the film, you should bookmark this and then come back later. So if you don't mind light spoilers and you just want to know what this film is about, especially if you are kind of squeamish and you don't have any plans to watch the movie at all because of the nature of the film, then hopefully you can understand, the general plot and the theme of the movie from how I discussed this overall summary. So in the substance, we learn the story of Elizabeth Sparkle, a fading 50-year-old Hollywood star who was fired from her popular aerobics show. She learns of a serum that will allow her to become a younger, more perfect version of herself. However, this isn't something that just makes her appear younger. An actual younger body violently emerges from her back when she takes this serum. So Elizabeth's consciousness is in this younger body and she lives life as Sue. However, when she is Sue, she must still feed and protect her original body because they need to switch back and forth every 7 days in order to prevent catastrophic side effects. The film covers Elizabeth's struggle to maintain this new life amid her growing resentment at the success her younger body is experiencing. This film is probably best described as a body horror, slash dark comedy. The two main influences that I felt were The Picture of Dorian Gray, where a young man stays young by having a painting locked away in his attic that ages instead of him. However, in this film, the thing that's locked away is Elizabeth's actual body. And the other influence that I really picked up on is The Fly, the sci-fi classic that shows in a very visceral fashion that bodies falling apart and transforming due to scientific experiments gone wrong is a very kind of gross and creepy, horrifying prospect. The film is a mix of these things with some, obvious social commentary thrown into it. And so I would really say the overall feel for me was that this felt like kind of a dark fable. So I watched the film, and the thing that I kind of took away from it most was that I really did understand and believe the body horror label that this film has. There were a couple of times where I had to close my eyes because I did not want to see what was actually happening, and I'm not a squeamish person. And so I would say this is something that again, if you like the body horror slash, dark fairy tale, maybe satire, and you like that kind of visual representation of these types of themes on the screen, you'll enjoy this film. So let me dive into the causes of death or the causes of celebration I have for this film. So the main cause of celebration, which is really integral to the plot itself, is that both of the actresses in this film spend a considerable amount of time nude, but it's actually essential to the plot because the whole plot revolves around how Elizabeth handles being older, how she handles the fact that she's in a profession where her body, how she looks, her loss of youth is perceived. And this is based on many things that people go through, not only in Hollywood, but in, daily life and everyday life. And so part of that essentially is how she views herself. You see her staring at her body in the shower while she's in the mirror getting ready. And so the thing that I think this film did a really good job of is not making this, erotic. It's actually far more clinical in nature, the way that the film focuses on her appreciation or lack thereof of her own body. Most of the time, these scenes are in a very bright bathroom with like fluorescent lights. They're fully nude, but you can appreciate the differences in the 62-year-old body and a 30-year-old body. And that's important because this is again Elizabeth's story. This is her responding to how she feels when she sees a 30-year-old version of her compared to her, 62-year-old body. And I say 62 years old because that's how old Demi Moore is, but in the film, her character is 50 years old. And the ability to visually see these differences in the way that the film is shot is actually quite important. One of the things that's also really nice is that there's a clear difference in how the camera focuses on the 30-year-old Sue. Since her job as a fitness instructor of this aerobics class, it's clearly based more on kind of the leering male gaze. And so you really see a difference in how a woman looks at her own body when she's in the mirror, even if she's appreciating it, versus something that's highly like sexually charged and designed more for male approval. And so I thought that was something that the film did a really good job of because, one of the takeaways you could have from this film is like, wow, for something that's about, empowerment and understanding your own beauty, it does seem to focus on naked women's bodies a lot. But I thought that they really did a good job of showing the difference between self appreciation and external appreciation there. Another thing that was really nice about the way this film was shot is that they use a lot of close-ups and in some cases extreme close-ups and macro lens shots for a lot of the film. And this really was great because it was very immersive. It really pulls you into the film. And again, for a film that focuses so much on perfection or imperfections of the body, you really had to have these moments and have the film shot this way so you could appreciate the level of detail that the character is focused on. And so with the kind of stark color choices and these, extreme close-up shots, the film really pulls you in to the physical reality of these characters. And I thought that that was something that was really well done. Demi Moore does more than just simply take her clothes off for this film. She has one scene that I really think is the heart of the film that was incredibly moving. Early in the film, she meets a man who knows her from childhood, and even though she's this 50-year-old, washed up actress, he acknowledges that he believes she's still the most beautiful woman in the world and he wants to go on a date with her after she has gone through the transformation with the substance, and she's lived life as Sue for a while, she decides to call this man up while she's back in her original body to go out on a date with him. And one of the things that we see very clearly, and this is again a testament to Demi's great acting, is that as she's looking at herself in the mirror, she's all done up, she's put her makeup on, she's dressed to go meet this guy for dinner, she starts to have self-doubts because it's clear that her life as Sue, her life and this time she spent in this younger version of her body, has really made her doubt herself, doubt her own beauty. And again, even though she has a guy who's validating her physical appearance, even, she just can't see it. And so even though she's about to get ready to leave to go to dinner to meet this guy, she just wipes off all her makeup and starts to do it over. And then she keeps doing this over and over again. And you can clearly see, like in her mind, she's looking at, pictures and billboards of the younger version of her, Sue, and she's subconsciously just thinking to herself, I'm not good enough. I can't be her. I don't look good enough to do this. And eventually she just gives up and stays home. This is done without any dialogue. Demi Moore doesn't have to speak anything. It's just shown on her face. It's shown through the frustration that you see her going through in that anguish. And I think that this was really a great acting moment. Uh, Again, I think this was the best moment in the film because it really showed that it's her mental image of her perfect self in Sue that's her enemy. And that's the thing that's really holding her back. And this is something that people can experience without, going through all the lengths of things people did in this film in order to get a younger self. It's the most important scene because later in the film, slight spoilers, we see Elizabeth transform into a literal monster when, things go wrong in this type of sci-fi body horror film. But the real message of the film is that Elizabeth sees herself as a monster already, especially compared to what she could be. And that really has a lot to do with, self-image and the doubts that she has. So seeing this scene really showed that it didn't take a dramatic transformation for Elizabeth to hate herself. It just took a younger version of herself in her mind's eye for her to hate what she already was, even though externally she was getting the validation. The most impressive thing about this film is the way that it embraces body horror. Even before we see a Cronenberg type of monstrosity, the process through which Elizabeth goes to create her younger body is something that's quite graphic. It's not just she takes a shot and all of a sudden her, wrinkles go away, she looks younger. Her body, her back literally splits open and her younger self emerges from there. And this leaves the husk of her older body bleeding on the bathroom floor. This is not some, magic potion. This is a very dramatic and very physically violent process. The younger version of her, Sue, still has to take care of Elizabeth's body and she has to feed it, etc. It's a very medical like process with, intravenous feeding, spinal taps to get fluid that the younger clone needs. They really do a lot of intentional parallels with drug use, really to highlight that this process is something that, like an addict, that Elizabeth has become addicted to. And she has to go through the physical pain that people will go through to inject themselves with drugs in order to stay young. And so one of the things I did appreciate was even in the early process, it's a very painful depiction of how this is done. It's something that you could tell how much it hurts her to do it, and it makes you understand just the level of her addiction to being young or feeling young because she's going through these painful medical procedures day in and day out in order to stay in this younger body. And so once Elizabeth evolves to this, Cronenberg type monster, there are a lot of very impressive practical effects that only occasionally use CGI enhancement in order to kind of sell the points a little bit further. And the director here, I'm sure, was clearly inspired by, David Cronenberg. Classic film The Fly. The Fly, if people have not seen that, came out 1986, Jeff Goldblum, one of the best body horror films in terms of really showing the just shocking transformation that a person's body could go through and change from something human to looking like something that's not recognizable as human. One of the kind of Easter eggs for people who are very familiar with Cronenberg and The Fly in particular is that, spoilers again, at the end of the film, when everything starts to fall apart, as you would expect, Sue has body parts fall off of her, and the body parts that she loses are the exact same body parts that Jeff Goldblum lost in The Fly. So you're seeing, teeth fall out, you're seeing an ear fall out, you're seeing, fingernails break off, and, that type of very, gross depiction of the body transformation is the exact same thing, here. And, I don't hate when directors or writers have these types of tributes to past films. This is a mix of, at least two films, maybe three or four others that I can name, but it is a very interesting way of telling this story. And that's why I love the way that they embrace the body horror aspect all the way through. You see Elizabeth go through different stages of her transformation as things go haywire. And once you get to a point where she literally looks like a giant hunchback, you think, oh, well, this is as bad as it's going to get, right? Absolutely wrong. The monster that Elizabeth turns into at the end of the film has limbs and body parts in places where they shouldn't be. And she looked more like a living teratoma than an actual human. It's certainly very memorable. The end of this film is something that is quite shocking in terms of just how gory it gets. I can't think of a film that has as much blood and other fluids, let's just put it that way, that they have at the end of this film. And if you are a person who can stand and likes things like that, you will really enjoy this. So those are my main causes of celebration for the film, and I don't really have anything that I would consider a true cause of death for this film. Most of the things that I don't think worked as well as they could have, I think would be better addressed by talking about a few script stitch ups. So let's take a break to pay some bills, and we'll come back with our script stitch ups. Feeling like time is catching up with you, wrinkles, sagging skin, and a general sense of ugh. Say goodbye to aging with The Substance. This revolutionary serum doesn't just make you look younger, it makes you be younger. Literally. Just one dose and the younger, perfect version of yourself emerges right out of your back. Sure, it's messy. Sure, there's a lot of screaming and blood, but beauty has its price, right? Here's how it works. Inject the substance. Wait for your flawless younger self to violently burst forth. Maintain your original body, like a human Tamaguchi. Just feed it, hydrate it, and avoid catastrophic side effects. Side effects may include back pain, drug use, growing resentment towards your younger self, and turning into a literal monster. The substance. It's not magic, it's science. Bloody, horrifying science. Available now wherever questionable life choices are made. And we're back. So let's talk about some of these script stitch ups that I think could really help this film. And so, one of the things that I thought was quite interesting in terms of where they go with this film in the end is that it's really a depiction of how one woman uh, views herself, how she will go through any lengths to be beautiful and be young. And that's something that, anybody who has seen any film or story about how people, especially women in Hollywood, are treated, it's not groundbreaking. It's not anything new. And so there were a couple of moments where I thought that they could do a little bit more kind of a biting satire about the way that people in general understand that we shouldn't put this pressure on women to look good, but we do. Where, no offense to people, that sometimes people who undergo things like plastic surgery have, results that don't look great, yet people pretend that it's okay. People pretend like you should push this onto others as if it's fine. And so, as Elizabeth is going through her, very dramatic transformation into a literal monster, uh, one of the things that you see happening in her mind is she thinks that even though she looks this horrible, that people still love her, which I thought was a great, interesting point. I thought that was great satire about, yeah, you see some people who look horrible despite all the work done, but you have people kind of just applauding along and clapping, saying that they look beautiful. But in the film, it's revealed that no, that was just going on in her mind, and people, treat her like a literal monster and attack her. I thought keep that kind of more biting satire where no, even if she looked horrible, even if she looked, physically unwell to people, sadly, a lot of people would praise her for what she's going through. And I thought that that was another aspect of the film that really seemed a little bit out of place in terms of what the world is like right now. In the film, you see that Elizabeth learns of this whole process through a kind of shady shady doctor and you see her sneaking around to get it done. In reality, this would be something that her friends would have recommended to her. There would be, multiple people, including other famous people like her, who would be going through this. And so just that inability to bite a little bit harder into what Hollywood is like, what the pressure for women to look as young as possible, despite whatever medical procedures we put them through, I thought was kind of missing for the film. And so I would rework some of the script to have that clearly defined. One thing about the film that is deliberate, you can tell, is kind of the over-the-top acting that a lot of the characters do. There is a fine line between satire and parody. And because of the over-the-top acting, the, kind of dramatic, kind of sometimes silly flashbacks and, cuts to flashback scenes through certain points of the film, it kind of dulls the emotional impact that certain scenes would have or could have if it was played more, straight. And so I feel like this is a film that, despite the, dark comedy aspect that it goes for, I thought it would have actually worked a little better if it were more grounded in just this drama. And that's where I felt like the attempts to go for laughs, the attempts to go for humor more than just actually letting the moment sit and letting us feel the true weight of the emotional beast that the characters were going through was something that was kind of missing. So, in summary, I'm glad I got a chance to check out The Substance. It's very rare to see a body horror film like this get so much award recognition. It's a story that, we've heard before about what people will do to stay young, but because of the, very visceral, very nice practical effects, because of the commitment to the actors to producing a film with this much, kind of raw intensity, I think it's something special. If you're not squeamish, if you don't hate these types of films, I think you will enjoy watching it. I don't think it's a must watch where you have to try to run out and see it right now. I will stick with my 3.5 out of 5-star rating for it and say that this will definitely be a guilty pleasure film that people will recommend to others, if simply for the sake of grossing them out by saying you have to watch this type of thing. And that's it for this episode of Movie Postmortem. Don't forget to like and subscribe and give us 5 stars because even bad podcasts deserve a good review. Remember, whether it's good, bad, or just a guilty pleasure, every movie deserves a postmortem. Thanks for listening.